Namaskar. Welcome. This week I would like to begin with a story that a friend of mine reminded me about last night, and I really love this story. And there's a whole beautiful spiritual idea that goes with it. So the story is about Nasruddin. He's a kind of a crazy mystic, a Sufi mystic. There are thousands of stories about him, and each of them have some kind of lesson associated with them. So Nasruddin was usually poor and usually considered to be a little bit crazy by everybody around him. And this story kind of confirms that a little bit. So one day, one of Nasruddin's friends was going for a walk by the lake. And as he was walking around the far side of the lake, he found Nasruddin there with a great big wooden spoon in his hand, stirring the lake. And he said to him, "Nasruddin, what are you doing?" And Nasruddin replied, "I'm making yogurt." And his friend said, "Nasruddin, you can't make yogurt in a lake." And Nasruddin replied, "I know that, but imagine if you could." So I like that story because nobody except Nasruddin would imagine such a fantastic thing as being able to turn the whole lake into yogurt. The average person, such an idea wouldn't come to their mind. But it came to Nasruddin's. And why I like this story is because that's the kind of imagination you're going to need if you're really going to succeed on the spiritual path. You have to imagine the possibilities that the average person never even considers. And if you can imagine those possibilities, if you can get even the slightest little glimpse of them, it awakens an excitement for the spiritual journey that will carry you forward. So, what are the types of imaginings that I'm talking about? Imagine what it would feel like to be permanently omniscient. What would that feel like? To be permanently all-knowing, omniscient. If you can get a little taste of that, you're touching the possibilities, the inner realities of your fundamental being, which is pure being, pure consciousness, which is all-knowing permanently. That is the Atma, yourself. Pure consciousness without boundary. Now we do meditation, but we meditate with very mundane goals, a little bit of peace of mind, a little bit of relaxation. But that's not what yoga is really about. It's about self-realization. And if you're starting to consider self-realization, well, what does it mean? The self, the Atma, is omniscient, omnipresent, all-knowing. If you're going to pursue such a goal, you have to awaken a little bit of excitement about it. So, what would it feel like to be all-knowing permanently, to be in that permanent state of all-knowingness? When I consider that question, it sends a thrill of excitement for me. And if I put aside my, habitual little box-like habits of thinking about myself, and they're just habits, by the way, that infinite self is there in you all the time. You just block it by your habits of smallness. So if I put that aside for a moment and I just ask myself, well, what would that feel like? To be omniscient, all-knowing, and for that to be my permanent state. Just to consider such a possibility sends a thrill of excitement. I mean, I'm nowhere near that. But somehow, what, didn't occur to me as possible before, now, if I just spend a little moment to ask that question and feel it, it becomes somehow, I sense there it is possible. Because I sense something hidden that is there, some reality. It is the reality. Our fundamental reality is that. And if I open myself to it, I can have the possibility of touching even just a little bit. But even a small bit of omniscience is pretty exciting. Another question of the Nasruddin type, imagine if you could, is, I wonder what it would feel like to be permanently omnipresent. Omni means all, present means to be present everywhere. So omnipresent means to be present everywhere permanently. To jump out of my skin, my little boundaries that box me in, and embrace the part of me which is pure being present everywhere in the universe. What would that feel like? Now that's a meditation. You can just ask that question, close your eyes, and sincerely explore, what might, I wonder, what could it feel like to be present everywhere? And let your sense of self just jump over your little walls and spread out. Permanently, what would it be like to be permanently in that state? Not just in a few moments of meditation, but to open your eyes and be in that state every moment of your life, to be present everywhere. So, the average person would consider such questions totally mad. But that little bit of madness is what drives the yogi, the pursuit of that possibility. And it begins with asking those questions. Another of those questions, transcending the boundaries of space, being everywhere, transcending the boundaries of mind, knowing everything, transcending the boundaries of time, what would it feel like? Well, that's included in the word permanent, so what would it feel like to be immortal? And when we ask that question, we just step aside from our assumption, our daily assumption that we are this mortal body and this mortal personality. And when we step away from that and ask ourselves the question of what would it feel like to be immortal, we step one step closer to that part of us, spirit, being, which is never born and never dies and is immortal. So that's the phrase for this week. Imagine if you could. Thank you. Have a good week.